Today I thought I'd do a quick walkthrough of all the raised beds that have been conditioned for the winter. They've had most of the annual vegetables removed and mulched with fresh compost and then covered with several inches of straw so that the soil won't be eroded during the winter months. This particular bed still has some crops growing in it which will last for a while. They're all frost tolerant. There's a black-seeded Simpson leaf lettuce there. There's a romaine lettuce next to it, and there's some winter carrots next to it. But that's the only vegetables that are still growing in these winter beds. Except I just noticed in the bed next to it, spinach is still growing. It has been frozen 2 or 3 times, but it's still growing. You'll notice all these beds have a railing around them. That's to keep the rabbits from jumping up on the beds. And they like to make their nest in this straw during the winter. So keep them out of those beds. This bed is a U-shaped bed, which has its good points, its bad. I don't particularly like it and won't buy another one. On the end are the tomato cages. The tomatoes have all been removed, and the cages are left there for the winter months. There you'll see a strawberry plant and a fire ring, and they haven't gone dormant for the winter yet. So when they do, those leaves will be pulled off and composted and then heavily mulched. The gravel bed you see on the other side is for a new greenhouse that we're getting. It'll be delivered next week, hopefully. And it's a 10 by 14 greenhouse will be sitting there. On this side of the bed you'll find some more rhubarb plants. This is a Canada red or Canadian red. This is a Victoria, and the one adjacent to it's another Victoria. And the big one on the end is a Glaskin's perpetual rhubarb. And these 2 young ones on this side are also Glaskin's perpetual rhubarb. I started from seed this spring and they're growing really well. And I've been very happy with the results from seeds. And as we walk out towards the other bed, we'll walk across where the greenhouse is going to sit. And you can see the compost bins here. These are new ones I built this year. And they are getting filled quickly. The left bay is already full, and the right bay is beginning to fill up. The middle has some finished compost into it. Next spring, after these 2 on the end set over the winter, they'll be turned into that middle bay, and then the end bay on the left will start filling again, and the one on the right will be filled again. Next to that we have 2 Jora composters. These are compost tumblers, and they're both full of compost. You can see this one is mostly broken down, and it'll be done by the end of the month. These composters are insulated with this foam, as you can see, and they compost all winter long. Out along the fence we have our comfrey that we use for compost, and we use it for mulching plants, and we make comfrey tea out of it. It gets a lot of use, and I expanded last year. I only had those on that end, and this year I added ones down here so that we'll have more of them. These are a couple gooseberry plants here. They're poor man gooseberries. This is our arbor that we have built between these 2 beds. It was totally covered with beans, and earlier this year with sweet peas, and we had cucumbers growing on it. I just love the arbor that's built out of cattle panels. This bed still has some winter carrots in it that haven't been pulled. They'll be out probably within the next week or so. The rest of the bed has been winterized. It's been mulched with fresh compost and then covered with straw, and the same for this one over here. So all of the beds, or almost all of them, are prepared for the winter. This area area next to the beds is the back to Eden garden. This is where we had all of our winter squash growing, and they love growing on these wood chips. One of the beauties of the wood chips is that they hold lots of moisture, and the squash do really well. Each joint on winter squash sends roots down into the wood chips and pulls up moisture, so that if a squash vine borer gets in the vine somewhere, the rest of the vine just keeps going. But this entire area, as you can see, is all back to Eden, and that brings us back over to where our comfrey is growing over here. Down in front is 3 basic ornamentals. These are leeks, which are edible. They make great leek soup, but I kept 3 of them and put them here, and gonna let them bloom next year. They have beautiful blooms in the spring, so that's the reason those are down there. So that's pretty much the gardens at the winter time, and as you can see, we can walk back up towards the main gardens and see the pad where the greenhouse will be going next week. Next to it, I mulched heavily with wood chips, just because I didn't want anything growing there. Maybe the other reason, and I may put something there next year. This is our main beds up here, and they're all ready for winter, and winter isn't far off. We've been down into the low 30s at night and the 60s during the daytime. So that pretty much concludes the winter tour of the gardens.